We live in very dangerous times. The Bible is for us in the very last days more than for anybody that has ever lived, really, as far as bringing us an understanding of what is happening in the world today and what is going to happen in such terms that it will cause people to turn to Him, and once He returns, they will finally accept Him. In 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 1, it says, "This know also that in the last days perilous times shall come." Now the word perilous is number 5467 in the Greek section of the Strong's Concordance. It means difficult times, furious times. It means dangerous times. So we could say, "This know also that in the last days shall come dangerous times." Yes, perilous or dangerous times are going to come. Are they already happening in the United States of America in some places? Are there things that are happening that you and I don't just see on the nightly news? We don't even see it in the newspapers, and we don't understand that it's even happening in America. This message in no way is to denigrate anyone of any nationality. It is just the facts as history bears them out right now in the last days. During the war on terror that has been going on since 9/11, 4 times more Americans have died at the hands of illegal aliens within the borders of the United States than the number of soldiers have been killed in Iraq and Afghanistan over the last 7 years. Illegal aliens continue their own killing zone against Americans in every corner of American society. Can this be proven? Is it true? 3 years ago, an illegal alien, after being stopped by police and released 3 separate times, his name was Gomez Garcia, executed Denver police officer Don Young. Executed him. Another illegal alien, Francisco Montero, with 11 prior stops for drunk driving, killed Dale Englerth in Boulder, Colorado. Yet another illegal alien killed Officer Brian Jackson in Dallas, Texas. That was in 2007. Another illegal alien killed Officer Nick Erfel in Phoenix, Arizona. 2 more illegals ran over and nearly killed former Colorado University pro prospect quarterback John Hessler. It sent him into a wheelchair for the rest of his life with severe brain damage. Both illegals fled back to Mexico. In the year 2007 in New Jersey, 2 illegal aliens executed 3 black American college students in the back of their heads as they knelt in a vacant lot. It hit the news media. August of 2008 in San Francisco, Edwin Ramos coldly shot Mr. Tony Bologna, 48, and his 2 sons, Michael, 20, and Matthew, 16, while they sat in a traffic jam. What did all these illegal aliens hold in common? Each one of them, what did they hold in common? The answer is the police arrested every single one of them multiple times, not just once, multiple times. Many sported rap sheets that were up to 5 pages long with felonies, drunk driving, rapes, burglaries, car theft, and worse. Yet they were turned loose every single time. Would American be turned loose if they committed such things, you or me? What else did they hold in common? The answer is every single one of them enjoyed exemption from the law. How is that possible, an illegal alien receiving exemption from the law? We'll see. How did they accomplish freedom from this law that you and I are held accountable if we break it? The answer is that every single one of them lived and worked in what is known as a sanctuary city within the United States that gave them immunity from arrest and deportation for their status as illegal aliens, no matter what crime they committed. In other words, our laws do not pertain to them, only us. They could drive drunk, drive without a license, drive without insurance, work without papers, not pay taxes, and live within the United States totally against our laws. As the Southwest Airlines slogan goes, you're now free to move about the country. And they are, everywhere. Now, who stands guilty of all of these deaths? And there's been many more, because I'm going to show you before I'm through how many have actually died at the hands of illegal aliens that is known. And we'll see that we are living in dangerous times. But for those who are guilty of these deaths, for starters, Los Angeles Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa, and also San Francisco's Mayor Newsom, Mayor Gordon of Phoenix, Arizona, Mayor Richard Daley of Chicago, Mayor Bloomberg of New York City, and Mayor John Hickenlooper in Denver, Colorado. Every one of these major cities is a sanctuary city, and they stand in direct violation of United States federal laws and in direct violation of their oath of office. Yet nothing is ever done to stop it. Every one of those mayors from the past and on into the future stands responsible for killing thousands of American cities by letting the activities go and never holding anyone accountable for them. But 1 week ago from this taping, the most horrendous of sanctuary cities killing crimes occurred in Denver, Colorado. You can find it in the Denver Post if you want to go there. An illegal alien from Mexico with 16 prior arrests, 11 different aliases. His name, Francisco Hernandez, at the time of this writing in the Denver Post, was 23 years old. He was drunker than a skunk on a Saturday night. And he drove his vehicle into a Baskin-Robbins ice cream parlor, killed 2 women, 149 and 151, who were enjoying an ice cream. But beyond the 2 adults, there was a third person that was killed, a little boy. His name was Martin Cudless, 3 years of age. He sat happily on a stool in Baskin-Robbins with his ice cream cone in his hand. This story can turn your stomach, especially if you have little children. It sickens your heart to know that here is the only child of a family destroyed by an illegal alien with 16 prior arrests using 11 different aliases. He fled to Mexico. Why do you obey the law, but our own elected officials refuse their obligations to serve and enforce our statutes? Colorado Governor Ritter gave hundreds of known drug dealers agricultural trespass that allowed them back onto the streets during his tenure as Denver's district attorney. Now, this was hundreds of known drug dealers. This little 3-year-old, Martin, didn't stand a chance because of the criminal career of a 23-year-old. He didn't stand a chance because Mayor John Hickenlooper would not enforce the law, but he allowed sanctuary for illegal aliens in Denver, Colorado, to do anything they want because they were outside the law. In fact, if you want to talk about something even more horrific, Mr. Hickenlooper owned the Cherry Cricket restaurant where a killer, Gomez Garcia, worked that I mentioned, which shot Denver officer Don Young. He literally worked for the mayor in one of his businesses. But it doesn't end there. Hickenlooper of Denver, Colorado, stood by as another young man, husband and father, Justin Goodman, died at the hands of another illegal alien 3 years ago who was hit and run. Accident took place. Here was a man with a 5-page rap sheet, but had never been deported for any of his illegal activities, and killed those individuals, all because it was a sanctuary city with a sanctuary policy allowing them to be above the law. According to Joseph Farah of WorldNet Daily, September 5th, 2008, quote, "Though no federal statistics are kept on murders or any other crimes committed by illegal aliens, a number of groups have produced estimates based on data collected from prisons, news reports, and independent research." So these reports that I'm going to mention to you now are less than what they should be. The numbers will be low. They went on to report that 12 Americans are murdered every day by illegal aliens, according to statistics that were released by Representative Steve King, Republican from Iowa, to the United States House of Representatives. If those numbers are correct, it translates to 4,380 Americans murdered annually by illegal aliens. Since September 11th of 2001, that means 21,900 Americans have been killed by illegal aliens. More than everybody killed in Afghanistan and Iraq 4 times over. The carnage wrought by illegal alien murders represents only a fraction of the blood that has been spilled by American citizens as a result of this open border policy and the unenforced immigration laws that we all live with. While King reported 12 Americans murdered daily by illegal aliens, he also went on to report 13 are killed by drunk illegal alien drivers every single day of the year. That adds up to 4,745. When you multiply that times 7 years from September 11th, 2001, it adds up to 23,725. So when you begin to add the numbers together, you get over 45,000 that have been killed in America alone by illegal aliens, while we only have a little over 4,000 in Afghanistan and Iraq that have been killed. While no one in the government tracks all United States accidents caused by illegal aliens, the statistical evidence suggests that many of 2007's 42,636 road deaths were because of illegal aliens. A report by the AAA Foundation for Traffic Study found 20% of fatal accidents involved at least one driver who lacked a legitimate license. Representative King also reported 8 American children are victims of sexual abuse by illegal aliens every single day, for a total of 2,920 a year. That's his stats from the House of Representatives. Now, based on a 1-year in-depth study, Deborah Sherman Coughlin of the Violent Crimes Institute of Atlanta estimated there were about 240,000 illegal immigrants who were sex offenders in the United States, and they had an average of 4 separate victims each per year. She analyzed about 1,500 cases from January 1999 through April of 2006. That included serial rapes, serial murders, serial homicides, child molestation committed by only illegal aliens. All of these illegal alien criminals say that they enjoy sanctuary city protection from approximately 30 major cities in the United States. Every one of them, all of these cities are in direct violation of the United States Constitution, USC Code 8, various pages where the codes are located within USC 8. Now, if Mayor Hickenlooper's family members were the ones who suffered death, do you think that he would allow Denver to be a sanctuary city? Would he immediately rescind sanctuary policies for illegal aliens? What about New York Mayor Bloomberg if it was one of his family members that were raped, sexually molested? Would Mayor Gordon in Phoenix, would they put a stop to it? What if Martin Cudless had been your son, your only son, as he was the Cudless only son, only child? I find myself a sense of reason, logic, ration that says we should never have anyone running cities to offer sanctuary that makes people above the law when we have to keep the law. The Bible is filled with statements that we are to keep God's laws, statutes, and judgments. That's what we're supposed to be. This nation was declared February 29th, 1892, in a 9-0 decision of the Supreme Court to be a Christian nation. But we've abandoned all of God's ways. Most people, that is. A few still remain. But most people have abandoned God's ways. Those in high office do nothing to stop it, to change it. They not only refuse to uphold their oath of office, they instead aid, abet, and assist illegal aliens in all of their activities, whether it's in murdering American citizens, wreaking havoc in our communities and in our lives. And it's beyond comprehension that we saw a Republican National Convention and a Democratic National Convention, and not one single word was mentioned about this Holocaust that is happening within our own country. 4 times the number of people killed than in the war in Iraq and Afghanistan by illegal aliens. We only wonder what would happen if some of these mayors were involved themselves. What do we see as something very dangerous that is about to occur in the United States of America? There was something that was formed many, many years ago called the United Nations Organization. For those of us who have studied it in great detail, we know that it was designed from the beginning to be a world government. It was to exalt one man to rule the whole world. It was to have its own military. It was to fight any nation on the face of the earth and even use nuclear weapons to destroy any nation that would not go along with our new world order. A few years ago in my hometown of Anniston, Alabama, and the very town that adjoins to it, Oxford, they received a rude awakening as the night skies began to darken. Soldiers from Fort Bragg, North Carolina, suddenly appeared in dark uniforms as they dropped from helicopters into people's yards. Electricity was cut off for the entirety of the town. It went completely dark. Silhouettes of soldiers were everywhere. Machine gun fire began to lighten the night sky. Hundreds of calls began to flood into the sheriff's office. The sheriff said he had no idea what was going on. He would try to check and find out. The soldiers captured the Anniston, Alabama airport. They took control of the whole town. After the absolute secret exercise was over, the Anniston Star newspaper contacted Fort Bragg, North Carolina military base to find out what just happened. Fort Bragg's public relations staff just said that it was an urban exercise. Public relations was that the city was under siege. This is what they said. But the reaction from the public, the citizens, thought they were being attacked by enemies of America. And it was truly an invasion from Russian or Chinese communist troops. The entire city laid in fear. On August 27th, 2008, solid black helicopters with no more markings on them swarmed downtown Portland, Oregon. I received calls from people on our mailing list there telling me about it. These black helicopters have been making more regular appearances in major cities of the United States. Why? Remember, this is all Bible prophecy in the scripture I started out with, that we should know that in the last day, dangerous times would come. And I'm pointing out to you how some of those dangerous items are going to come about. In Portland, Oregon, they talked about using live rounds of ammunition. As the military personnel practiced jumping onto rooftops in downtown Portland, and also before that in Salem, Oregon, as the exercises ran from August 17th through the 30th of 2008. The Army and the Navy said they were conducting urban military training. This was verified by KGW News Channel 8 in Portland, Oregon. But nobody else but the mayor alone was even told that these exercises would take place. The same thing happened as happened in Anniston, Alabama. The phones began to ring. All the city's phone lines were tied up for hours and hours as people were fearful. Even travelers in the city were stunned because of what they saw. No markings on the helicopters, no markings on the uniforms, the black uniforms of those who were landing on the rooftops. So as many calls came in to emergency dispatchers, finally the mayor gave a statement. It's nothing to worry about. This is what the people were told when they call in. And they went on to say, by the way, you might see more of the same tonight. That's all that would be said to the people. These types of activities have been going on for several years. My wife and I actually went to Fort Campbell, Kentucky and Tennessee, and we saw the black helicopters ourselves. We saw them training as they lifted up over the treetops. We wanted to make sure who was doing this. And so we saw the black helicopters. The question should be, why are they doing it? We were told that they were not practicing for urban warfare in America, but these were urban training exercises that would be fought in foreign wars, foreign countries. But it makes me wonder why strange surveys had been passed out to various military bases. The one that came into our possession was 29 Palms, California military base. We went there and we took pictures. They wouldn't let us in, but we took pictures of the people guarding the gate. We talked to them. We asked them questions. Silence. They turned us away. But the survey given at 29 Palms military base had 43 statements. And the people were to answer whether they were disagreed very strongly, or they just disagreed, or whether they agreed, or whether they strongly agreed, or whether they had no opinion. For our purposes today, I'm only going to mention about 6 or 7 of these statements to give you a trend as what's happening in the United States of America among our military. Statement number 28 said the United States runs a field training exercise. United Nations troops should be allowed to serve in U.S. units during these exercises under U.S. control and command. They were to answer whether they agreed or not, and how strongly they agreed or disagreed. This is our military. They wanted to find out, how far will you go in what we tell you to do? Statement number 30 said this: the United Nations runs a field exercise. Now remember, this is the United Nations, not the United States. United States combat troops should serve under United Nations command and control. Then you give your response to that statement. Statement 31, United States combat troops should participate in United Nations missions as long as the United States has full command and control. Then you give your response. Statement 32, notice where they're leading us, away from the United States being in control to the United Nations being in control, and we serve under them. 32, U.S. combat troops should participate in United Nations missions under United Nations command and control. Statement 33, United States combat troops should be commanded by United Nations officers and non-commissioned officers at the battalion and company levels while performing United Nations missions. The same 5 responses were offered. Then as they continued in this survey to take us on down to try to change the minds of individuals from being strictly loyal to America, they wanted them to become loyal to the United Nations. So they asked the final 3 statements. I would like United Nations member countries, including the United States, to give the United Nations all the soldiers necessary to maintain world peace. Number 42, I would swear to the following code. Remember, this is our military. Quote, I am a United Nations fighting person. I serve in the forces which maintain world peace and every nation's way of life. I am prepared to give my life in their defense. End of quote. And the last statement, this is the one that will blow you away, because this is what they're leading to in America. The United States government declares a ban on the possession, sale, transportation, and transfer of all non-sporting firearms. Now, they did this in Britain already. I'll continue the statement. A 30-day amnesty period is permitted for these firearms to be turned over to the local authorities. At the end of this period, a number of citizen groups refused to turn over their firearms. Consider the following statement. Quote, I would fire upon U.S. citizens who refuse or resist confiscation of firearms banned by the United States government. End of quote. Why is this important right now in history? George Bush was asked about being president. While he was president, would he confiscate firearms? He said, the time's not right yet. Does anybody know about Barack Obama and his belief on firearms? He plans on confiscating every firearm there is, even sporting firearms. He stated it. It's on the videos. Now, all of these urban exercises began after the surveys were given. Is our military going to be engaged in urban warfare training for foreign wars or against United States citizens that will not turn in their guns? Time is getting very close. Jesus Christ is the only protector. But there are other problems that needs to be called to our attention as we live in very dangerous times. America has many problems. They've been brought on by international socialism and communism, infiltrating and hoisting their socialistic system upon our shoulders. And a free market cannot maintain a socialistic program. It'll go bankrupt every time. But there's 2 fundamentals that have been perverted in America. Number 1, the private bankers finally succeeded in gaining control of our money system and have given us unredeemable paper money. They can just keep printing and printing and printing. And what used to be when I was 14 years old, went to the grocery store with my dad, we would get for $20 5 huge bags, and they had to double bag them so they wouldn't break, full of groceries. And now if you go in and get 3 items, it's $20. Not 5 bags, stuff that would keep you up for the next 2 weeks. Houses that cost $12,000, 3 bedrooms up in Dallas, Texas, $12,500 in 1962 is $175,000 today. Is that called inflation? Is that called unredeemable paper money? It is not backed by gold or silver as the Constitution requires, and there will never be a solution to the United States problems until they nationalize the Federal Reserve System and the money making goes back into the hands of Congress and it's backed by silver and gold. But there is a second fundamental. The communists have achieved their objective of centralizing all power in Washington, D.C. and bypassing the states and we, the people. We, the people, are the real government. We're supposed to be able to send our representatives and they tell our will on the national level, not theirs, not lobbyists, but our will. The communists and their financial backers, the international bankers that control our Federal Reserve System, laid down their plan to capture all power in Washington, D.C. long ago in the 1940s and 50s. The House of Rothschild, a banking family from London, England that heads up the Illuminati, sent agents into the South to provoke the southern states to leave the Union back in the 1860 and 61. They left the Union on a solid basis. They followed every detail that they were supposed to. They assembled their Congress in each state, made out a list of grievances, and delivered them to the federal government as to why they were leaving the Union. That was what was required. They did it. And so they left because their states' rights, the 10th Amendment, was being ignored and trampled upon. Everyone living at that time knew that each and every state was an independent, sovereign nation, only jointly working by union and agreement with Washington, D.C., a 10-square-mile place. They had an agreement with the federal government. They never surrendered any of their states' rights, their independence. Those working for world government are called for by the Illuminati, needed to find a way to get around states' rights, the 10th Amendment, so they could accumulate all power in Washington, D.C. Abe Lincoln knew and had made statements when he was in politics in Illinois that the South had the right to leave the Union because the federal government was violating its agreement, the Constitution. Yet while he spoke of leaving the South alone and letting them go their own way, establishing their own separate government, he was surrounded by Illuminati agents who had him to send warships down the coast and entered the bay at Fort Sumter, South Carolina. One of the infiltrators into state government in the South called for the firing on the northern vessels, and so it was, Fort Sumter, South Carolina. The firing on those ships began what was called the Civil War. However, state sovereignty was on the line. But the individuals did not realize that there was a plan at that time to destroy state sovereignty and to accumulate all power in Washington, D.C. 435,000 young Southern men died in the War of Northern Aggression, while a very large and nearly equal number of Northern young men died. What a tragedy to take away the youth of a nation. Those working their plan to eliminate states' rights didn't care. They look at human beings as nothing but cannon fodder to fight their wars so they can gain control of the world and all the riches of it. When the war fought between the states ended, General Robert E. Lee offered his sword to Ulysses S. Grant at Appomattox Courthouse on April 9, 1865. Chief Justice of the Supreme Court at that time, Salomon Chase, declared that states' rights, the 10th Amendment, was dead. He was rewarded for that, and his picture was placed on the $10,000 bill. Many people in America know something is wrong, but they can't quite lay their fingers on the problems. They haven't been taught the Constitution. They haven't been taught that there is a plan to overthrow every nation in the world for a one-world government, as prophesied in Revelation 13. All power is being centralized in Washington, D.C. in preparation for the total socialistic, communistic, or fascist state, whichever they choose. The rights of we, the people, have been stripped from us little by little. We feel helpless to stand for our rights given to us in the Constitution. Washington has passed law after law stripping us of our constitutional rights so subtly that the American people, who are distracted by just trying to make ends meet and never double check what is being done in Washington, has had these laws passed and their representatives passing them, and they don't even know the law has been passed. They don't know what's in it. They have not watched the Republican form of government as it's being stripped from us. One state decided enough was enough. Whether they're enforcing the law that they passed to regain their state's rights is another matter. On October 3rd, 1998, 56% of Louisiana voters approved Amendment number 11, which declares, and I'm quoting, "The people of the state have the sole and exclusive right of governing themselves as a free and sovereign state." And they went on in that statement and said they would forever have that jurisdiction and power and never relinquish it. The statement is now a part of the Louisiana Constitution's Declaration of Rights. When we look back, we find the concept of state sovereignty at the very foundation of the American Confederation as it was formed. In the beginning of our independent nation called America, each state was independent and sovereign. This concept was claimed in many of the founding documents, including the Declaration of Independence, Articles of the Confederation, the Treaty of Paris, and Kentucky and Virginia resolutions before they would come into the Union. Many, if not most, of the Founding Fathers looked upon state sovereignty as an indisputable fact. Even the Belleville, Illinois newspaper at that time, when the South was seceding, said, let them go. It's their constitutional right to do so. In 2008, the Oklahoma House voted to take back its states' rights, the 10th Amendment. Only 3 representatives voted no. All the rest voted yes. They went on summer vacation before the Senate had an opportunity to vote on the bill. That's still up for vote. Texas, through the years, has had 8 attempts to leave the Union and become an independent nation as it was from 1836 to 1845. Native Texans are up in arms over this Trans-Texas corridor that would link Mexico, the United States, and Canada for the North American Union, because it would destroy our rights once and for all. They're filling town meetings all over the state of Texas to fight against this threatened eminent domain, where they would seize your property and only give you what they want to give you for it. Texans from the Rio Grande River on up are now standing up for their rights. This is something to watch for as we go on. But the key is, do those working for the New World Order see Americans getting restless as they begin to learn what is happening to them? Will they take us in yet another war, say with Iran, just to divert our attention away from the schemes that they're using to enslave us at home? Remember, America was declared a Christian nation. That's very important that you understand that. February 29th, 1892. This was the longest decision handed down in American jurisprudence history. They quoted every single document of every state that came into the Union, their preambles, their constitutions, to prove that we were a Christian nation. But what if Barack Obama becomes president of the United States? What if he does? What are his beliefs on religion? I'm quoting a newspaper article now in which he says, "I believe there are many paths to the same place." And that is a belief that there is a higher power, a belief that we are connected as a people. End of quote. Doesn't that sound just like 32nd and 33rd degree Freemasons? All paths lead to the same God. And yet when you look and see what that God is, according to Albert Pike, who headed up all of Freemasonry in the world in the 1870s and 80s. And he even wrote his big book, Morals and Dogma. He said, in his letters and instructions to the 23 Grand Masters of the world, we of the high degrees must maintain the pure doctrine of Lucifer. And they believe that all paths go to the same God. Notice what else he said. Obama thinks, I'm quoting this newspaper article. Obama thinks that all people of faith, Christians, Jews, Muslims, animists, everyone know the same God. Where will he lead us? Where will he lead us if he becomes president of the United States? Why am I mentioning this? Because I have been saying for years that Christianity is the target. We went to see a movie Thursday night before this message called Traitor. It was recommended to us. I had reported how that they have a word in the Arabic language that means you can lie to the infidel if it will advance Islam. It was in that movie. Oh yes. Everything we've been talking about, how Islam acts and what a threat they are, this is radical Islam, was in that movie. And when you stop and look and think about what has been said by Barack Obama, we have a videotape of him being interviewed by George Stephanopoulos. Now, George Stephanopoulos is a socialist. He came into the Bill Clinton White House. During this interview, they started talking about a person's faith, and they didn't want to talk about it in politics. And he said, "My Muslim faith." He said he had a Muslim faith. And after a few seconds, Stephanopoulos broke in and said, "You mean Christian?" And boy, he stumbled all over himself, saying, yeah, Christian. No, he has a Muslim faith. And he is infiltrated.
What I was suggesting, you're absolutely right that John McCain has not talked about my Muslim faith, and you're absolutely right that that has not
Christian
come
faith.
My Christian faith. And
They said that they could elect an Islam leader in America and it would fall. That's why Mr. Barack Obama is such a danger to America, and people don't even know it. Christianity, as far as he's concerned, is just another way to the same path. He uses it as a cover. Well, are we going to see dangerous times with America in Afghanistan, Iraq, and now they found men of America and the Israelis in that little tiny country of Georgia, stirring up things there? Will we go into Iran? It's very interesting because you see, there was a book that was written by the name of a man by the name of Brad O'Leary. He wrote in response to Barack Obama's book, The Audacity of Deceit. And he took that book apart, step by step, to show that he omitted things. He deliberately deceived people who would ever read this book, because he came out with documented evidence to prove that Mr. Obama actually is deceiving the American people. I'd like to read another scripture in the Bible. Revelation 6, verse 7 and 8. We know there's 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. Then after that, there's persecution of saints. Verse 7 and 8 says, "And when he had opened the 4th seal, I heard the voice of the 4th beast say, 'Come and see.' And I looked, and behold, a pale horse. And his name that sat on him was Death, and hell," that means the grave, "followed with him. And power was given unto them over the 4th part of the earth, to kill with a sword," that's war. "With hunger," that's what happens when people are displaced and they can't get groceries, they die of starvation. "And with death, and with beasts of the earth." Now the word pale here, you can do this. Go home, look it up in a Strong's Concordance. It's number 5515 and from 5514 in the Greek section of the Strong's Concordance. It means greenish or green. What is the official color of Islam? Green. Look at their flags. Every one of them has green in it. And so it is. There is going to be war over a quarter of the earth. And it's going to pertain to those in Islam and whoever they say are their targets. Well, that's quite interesting to me. Mr. O'Leary, in his book, says Obama plans to enact, among other things, the following, and I will read them one by one. An increase in taxes from the low rate of 28% under Ronald Reagan to an economic stifling 60%. That's what's in his plans. Another point, an expansion. This is what Obama's going to do if he becomes president. Expand federal medical insurance to 12 million illegal aliens, and policies that would increase emergency room costs by $15.4 billion annually. Another point that he's wanting to pass, health care reforms that would let government determine which procedures and operations senior citizens are allowed to have. That sounds like Canada to me, where you wait 8 or 9 months, maybe you'll get the procedure instead of going to your private doctor right now. Another, a shift on the Supreme Court that would reverse the partial birth abortion ban. He wants to preserve Roe versus Wade and threaten Americans' Second Amendment gun rights.
The Obama campaign, meantime, is taking a shot at what might appear to be an unlikely constituency in Pennsylvania, gun owners. The Politico newspaper reports Obama is trying to highlight his background in constitutional law and downplay his record of voting consistently, his voting record of consistently supporting gun control. Obama has voted for bans on semi-automatic weapons and concealed weapons and voted for limits on handgun purchases.
Charlie Gibson raising the issue of gun control with Obama last night, specifically whether he favors a ban on handguns.
In 1996, your campaign issued a questionnaire, and your writing was on the questionnaire that said you favored a ban on handguns.
No, my writing wasn't on that particular questionnaire, Charlie.
Well, that's an Obama misstatement. His handwriting does appear on a questionnaire. Here's the survey in question. The Obama camp did not deny that that is Obama's handwriting. And the answer is yes to the question, do you support legislation to ban the manufacture, sale, and possession of handguns? Now, the Obama camp claims the answers provided in the survey don't reflect his current views. But why doesn't he say that?
The right to bear arms is one of the fundamental ideals on which our nation was founded. Hard-working, law-abiding Americans have for generations enjoyed this freedom in their communities and with their families. But Barack Obama believes that many Americans simply cling to guns in times of economic distress. Speaking behind closed doors to an audience of San Francisco donors, Barack Obama said they cling to guns or religion as a way to explain their frustrations. Obama's anti-gun record is long. In 2004, he voted against legislation drafted to protect homeowners from prosecution in cases where they used a firearm to halt a home invasion. In 2003, he voted in support of legislation that would have effectively banned most of the privately held hunting shotguns, target rifles, and black powder rifles in Illinois. And in 1996, Obama supported a ban on the manufacture, sale, and possession of handguns. But now, Obama's running for president and claims no knowledge of this, even though his handwriting is all over it.
Also, he wants to have sweeping environmental measures that would take 25% of farmland out of production, choke off America's domestic energy, and send energy and food costs skyrocketing. This is what he plans on doing, and the results. Then a new 0 to 5 program that would transfer child rearing responsibilities and authority from parents to the federal government. This is the man that wants change, but will not tell the American people what kind of change he would deliver. Another scripture from the Bible before I go into this next section that I want to talk about today. Acts 3, verse 20 and 21. And he, that's God the Father, shall send Jesus Christ, which before was preached unto you, whom the heaven must receive until the times of restitution of all things, which God has spoken by the mouth of all his holy prophets since the world began. Now the word restitution is number 605 and number 600 in the Greek Strong's Concordance. It means to reconstitute, to restore again. This is just like Genesis chapter 1, where the earth needed of necessity to be restored for human life to live on it. Why in the world will the heavens have to hold Jesus Christ until he must come back to this earth, or it would be unlivable? It's very interesting. Dutch intelligence services called off an operation where they had aimed to infiltrate and sabotage Iran's weapons industry so that they couldn't build nuclear bombs. Why did they do that? Because they discovered that there was a program by the Israelis and the United States government to imminently attack Iran. This came out in the newspaper De Telegraaf in the Dutch language. The report claimed that the Dutch operation had been extremely successful in infiltrating, but it was called off and their people brought home because they knew they would be targets also of the Israeli-United States attack. Have we been told, yes, Iran is a source of problems, and we may have to go to war with them? No, it's been planned a long time now. They're just waiting for the right moment in time. And this Dutch intelligence report, as reported in the newspaper there, said the impending airstrike on Iran was to be carried out by unmanned aircraft within weeks of the report. Does that mean before Bush leaves office? I don't know. It's just weeks. Didn't say 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 1,000 weeks. It just said weeks. The Jerusalem Post couldn't confirm, or they said they couldn't confirm what the newspaper had reported. So on Saturday, this was the 30th of August, Iran's deputy chief of staff warned that should the United States or Israel strike Iran, it would start another world war. How could they say that? They're in the old Persian Empire. You lay a map down, and Ezekiel 38 says they're a part of it. You lay that map down, the old Persian Empire, and it's Iran. Well, according to the report, whether the United States and Western countries succeed in stopping this Islamic Republic's nuclear ambitions, it doesn't matter, because there is going to be a strike on it to guarantee that it's stopped. Jerusalem has already begun preparing for a separate and independent military strike if the United States will not do it. There's another report, Weapons of Mass Destruction report. United States remains dangerously vulnerable. This report is out of Washington, D.C., Tuesday, September the 9th, 2008. It says the United States remains dangerously vulnerable to chemical, biological, and nuclear attacks. This is 7 years after the September 11th, 2001 Twin Tower collapse. They said that thousands of United States chemical plants remain unprotected, and the United States government continues to oppose strengthening an international treaty to prevent bioterrorism. Why would we try to prevent a treaty to stop bioterrorism? That doesn't even make sense. Do you want to live or don't you? But when the Bible says the head is sick from the head to the bottom of their feet, they don't know what they're doing up there. Or do they know, and it is so incredibly insane to us, but it is perfect for them, so they can create their world government. This release said the threat of a new major terrorist attack on the United States is still very, very real. There's another gentleman who has been for 20 years in the strategy and design of weaponry, their use, and the results if these weapons of mass destruction are used. He said a few interesting things concerning striking Iran. He said, sometimes in the weeks to months ahead, there will be a launch against Iran. War is coming. Whether it'll be started by Israel or the United States or a combination of NATO, United States, it doesn't matter, because it's inevitable. It is coming. Everything has already been set in motion. But what does that have to do with Jesus Christ remaining in the heavens until the restitution of all things? What could happen that would be so bad? Now, I'm not talking about asteroids, the first, second, and third, and fourth trumpets. I'm not talking about asteroids from outer space hitting the oceans or hitting the land masses and polluting the fresh water system. I'm not talking about that. But I'm talking about weapons of mass destruction. He went on to say, regardless of how this begins, there will be a war. And he says that there will be targets all over Iran. And it will become a major regional war within 48 hours. He said 90% of the Arab world will be engaged in it, because most of them have agreements with each other. He went on to say that the Iranians simply will not allow the Israeli or American military forces to attack its territory without a major response. How could they have a major response when they haven't built this nuclear weapons yet? He went on to explain something that has never been told on the news media, and it never will. He said the Iranians have equipped and paid for and trained a massive unguided rocket and guided missile system that's located in Lebanon. He said it's the largest such force ever produced in human history. It pales the United States. It pales Russia's military rockets. These missiles are in place as what is called mutually assured destruction, MAD. That is, if Iran is attacked and they feel that they're going to be wiped off the face of the earth, they will automatically attack those who are sending the missiles to them, and it will be a doomsday scenario. Well, if things such as nuclear missiles go off, what is left behind? Radiation, pollutants of the soil, pollutants of the air. And it knows no borders. When the wind blows, those pollutants will go to other countries. He said they have between 40,000 and 110,000 missiles and rockets stored in Lebanon. He said the Hezbollah special forces are the ones who have trained, and they're well equipped, and they're guarding them. He said they're of battalion size. That's a lot of people, a lot of military to fire these rockets off. He went on to explain how when Israel moved into Lebanon, they couldn't uproot these people, so Israel had to back off, or else Israel would have been destroyed themselves. Hezbollah are known to possess a considerable number of more advanced and longer range missiles than the West has thought. They're hidden away in caves, underground, bunkers, and so on. He said the combination of short to medium range rockets and guided missiles coming out of Lebanon, and then there are other guided missiles that are stored in Syria. He said they could wipe out the West Bank and most of Israel before Israel could even retaliate. Now, this is why they're considering going into Iran. But if they do, they better take out Lebanon too. Because if this man knows about it, surely our government knows about it. And the Israeli government knows about it because they couldn't even penetrate and get rid of Hezbollah. They said they have battle tanks, the Israelis, that went in trying to uproot all of the Hezbollah and their guided missiles so they could destroy them, and they could not do it. They wanted warplanes to go over, pinpoint weapons, and then take them out. But they couldn't. So this man came to the conclusion that the handwriting is on the wall. Iran will be attacked, but then there will be sufficient guided missiles and other types of missiles, unguided, that Iran will make a substantial showing. And the United States and its allies are underestimating what they have and the equipment and the personnel to run it. When this happens, of course, some of these weapons, they're loaded with radiological, chemical, biological weapons of mass destruction. When these warheads explode, these chemicals, man-made biological weapons, will go into the atmosphere. No wonder it says Jesus Christ will have to return to restore all things, the restitution of all things. Radiation will spread around the world from these nuclear bombs, you can call them, even though they're chemical, biological, and radiological bombs. Iranian sleepers, these teams are in North America. I don't know if some of you remember me interviewing for 4 television programs a man by the name of Larry Wayne Harris, who was a CIA operative helping some of the Iraqis to fight the Iranians. What he taught them was how to make bombs. They came to America. The FBI raided one of their places, suspected places, and he went with them. And sure enough, they found all the equipment there that they were going to use in America. Canisters where they would put biological weapons in it, drive a car down the street and emit it out into the atmosphere. And it would spread to neighborhoods all over America. They said they had 100 cells, that was in the late 1990s, about 96 or 97, already in place in America. But he said there's sleeper cells already in North America. Western Europe, And they will begin to seed all of these cells with this chemical, biological, radiological agents, these man-made killer viruses. And while we may win a war in Iran, we will lose our country. That's basically what he said. He said by the time we even understand there's sleeper cells in this country, it'll be too late to prevent anything of a massive outbreak from taking place. This is America. This is the land of the free, the home of the brave, but also the home of the targeted by the radicals around the world. They want America to come down. He said the death count could be, this is in America alone, 200 million people. Now, think about this. I gave a recent sermon which I quoted Ezekiel. It was either chapter 4 or 5, verse 1 to 4, where God told him to cut his beard, put it in 3 parts. 1/3 would die in the fire, in the siege of the cities. Then another third would die, and a third would escape, and they would send military after them. When biological weapons go off, this is not a pleasant thing. Are we living in dangerous times? Yes, we are, the most dangerous times in the history of the world. Can you and I do anything about it? We're not politicians. We don't go up to Washington, D.C. and make these decisions. We don't go over and talk to the Iranians and discuss with them the possibility of laying down all weapons and having a peaceful world. We don't do those things. But why are we sitting here learning of these things? Because Jesus Christ called each one of us. While the leaders of this world are leading it straight into absolute destruction, He is teaching and training you and me for a special job and a special purpose. Because when Jesus Christ comes back to this earth and He's going to restore all things, the Bible says clearly in Revelation 19:11 to the end of the chapter, that when the armies in heaven follow Him, that's going to be you and me. After we have met the Father at what looks like the sea of glass, we receive our reward, and we will follow Jesus Christ and the holy angels and come back to this earth. Somebody has to do something to make it habitable again. Jesus has all power in heaven and earth. We're going to be His younger brothers and sisters, but we will have the same body formation, spirit, just like God. He's the Father. Jesus has a body. He said in John 17:1 to 5, give me back that which the glory I had with you before the world began. Now He has come and given His life so that you and I and others like us can receive that same kind of body as our Father has, as Jesus has. We will be what you call born again, with a new spirit-composed body, and I'm just using human physical terms, but with the same DNA pattern that God the Father and Jesus has. He said once we receive this body, we will become perfect. We will never even be tempted with sin again. That means He has Jesus, who's going to be King of Kings over the whole world, and then He's going to have kings to be in other places, kings and queens. And we're going to teach this world, but first it's got to be cleaned up. It's got to be made habitable again. If there is biological agents that are man-made, that will kill anybody eventually that comes into contact with them. Radiological agents, man-made. And then if there's going to be these great, massive earthquakes that are coming, the sixth seal, the earth is going to be messed up. Somebody's going to have to take up the gauntlet and say, God, I will follow you now so that I can help in the restoration when Jesus comes. That's what He's called us for, to learn His laws from one end to the other so that we can administer them in our life, so that we'll no longer spread rumors, we'll no longer assassinate anybody with our language, we'll no longer commit adultery, we'll no longer have another God before the true God. We won't take His name in vain. We won't lust, we won't destroy our families. We're to learn to live God's ways today so that we can administer them tomorrow. And if we can't live it today, how can God trust us with such power in the future? Wouldn't it be to our advantage to make sure that we are in the perfect will of God? That sin, no matter how little it is in our life, when we recognize we've committed one, we repent and are determined never to do it again? Isn't that what God's looking for? Yes, He is. He's looking for people that He can trust for eternity. That He can trust to send back with His Son to restore all things so the human race will have a chance to be resurrected from the dead, have God's Spirit poured out upon them, and for the first time in human history, they will know the one and only true God. This is where we come in. Everybody's ears can't hear this, but God has called you to open your ears, to open your mind, to spiritually open your eyes so that you can comprehend the destiny that's set before you. And if we don't realize this destiny, and if it is just something to do every week instead of our life every day of every week, then we'll be in trouble. But God loves us. He loves you. He called you. He knows what some of you had to go through just to be here. He knows the love that He has for you. And you know how I know He loves you? Because 99% of everybody in this room, and those that are not here today because of the threatening weather, keep God's commandments to the very best of their ability. Jesus said, if you love me, keep my commandments. We can show that love. He also said, this is how all men will know that you're my disciples, if you love one another. I'm coming to you heart to heart that we're living in dangerous times and we cannot afford any longer to have petty differences, talk about people negatively behind their back, have any sin left in our life. We have to eliminate it. If we can't comprehend that Jesus Christ will have to come soon because of the way the world conditions are set up for exactly what He said, that He will have to come to restore all things, and that He will have to come because the very elect are here. And if we can't see that the world is getting set up for its total destruction, we haven't been doing our work of watching world news, of asking God to remove the blinders from our eyes. But if we do believe it with all of our heart, soul, and mind, then we can love one another. I don't care what kind of personality you've got. We've studied them all. You can love one another. You can. You S's can love those C's. You D's can love those I's. And right down the line, we can love each other, and we can show it by the way we treat each other. And all I say is if you're looking and you see that the times are very dangerous, then get within the love of God. Love for Him and love for each other. And I thank you in the name of Jesus Christ if you have listened.